typically, Jesus' parables contrasted one thing with another, but only a few have such a marked contrast as the parable we find in Luke 18, verses 9 through 14. It would in fact be hard to find two more complete opposites than the characters in this parable. One was the religious elite, a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. In those days, tax collectors were greatly despised by the Jews because generally they were Jews who had taken a commission with the Roman government to collect taxes from their own nation. And oftentimes they were dishonest and they took advantage of their people. And as a result, they often became wealthy as a result of their deceptive tactics. Now, there is not much information given about the context of this parable. Luke's comment in verse 9 does explain that the parable was directed at those who were self-righteous and who looked down upon others. There are just these two characters in this parable. The first is a Pharisee, and the Pharisees were very well known for their strict keeping of the law of Moses. The problem was that they had turned their religion into legalism. The law contained more than 613 individual commandments, and they covered a variety of topics ranging from religious rites to everyday living. But what the Pharisees had done was to add additional rules and regulations to the ones given by God. The result was a complicated system of very petty rules that few, if any, were able to keep. And anyone who did not strictly obey these rules was considered by the Pharisees to be a rank sinner. The other character was a tax collector, and there is no similarity between the tax collectors of Jesus' day and someone today who works for the Internal Revenue Service. These first century tax collectors were hated by the Jews because they were working for their enemies. They were dishonest in their dealings. And this man would have been a social and religious outcast and would have been considered by the religious leaders to be among those that they considered sinners. Well, the two men in this parable were so drastically different in their approaches to prayer. The Pharisee's prayer was all about himself. In fact, William Barclay in his commentary summed up his prayer in this way: the Pharisee did not really go to pray. He went to inform God of how good he was. The tax collector, on the other hand, he stood off to himself and would not even lift up his eyes to God, which was the typical custom of the Jews in prayer. This Pharisee was one who was arrogant, who was egotistical, selfish, ungracious, and trusted in his own acts of merit. He directly told God how good he was and that he was not like others. He bragged about his own good works in fasting and giving 1/10 of his income to God. He was proud of himself, and he felt that God should have been proud of him as well, should have reciprocated that pride and that joy back toward him. But the tax collector, he did not bring a list of good things he had done for God. He recognized his spiritual poverty. He recognized that without God, he was nothing, and he expressed it in his prayer. All that he did was to ask mercy for himself, and he recognized that he was a sinner. He asked God's mercy on him, a sinner. Friends, Jesus left no question about which prayer was heard by God. It was the humble tax collector that Jesus praised, rather than the self-righteous Pharisee. So friends, whenever we take the time, and hopefully we do so several times through the day, we do so frequently, to stop and we speak to our Heavenly Father in prayer, do we give all glory and honor and praise unto Him? Or do we try to elevate ourselves? Do we try to brag about ourselves and all of the good things that we have done? Or do we simply live lives of humble obedience to our Heavenly Father, knowing that our Father sees the good things that we do, and that we will be rewarded in heaven for our good works. Friends, we want to thank you for joining us for our program today. Please consider these things that we have discussed, and may God bless you with a wonderful day.